Hello, welcome to the Square Base Show with your hosts, Rob and Val, and finally, wrapping up the Renegades Compendium is the Vampire Counts. Here we go with Spooky Val.
It's me, and I did not load up the howling spooky sounds on the soundboard as I intended, but I did get the mission accomplished thing in the background, so
Perfect.
That's good. I, of course, also have a big announcement I forgot to mention pre-show.
What?
Which is, in the didgeridoo, right now, tickets on sale for the Square-Based Open Toronto. That's right, folks.
Why would you have mentioned that? Why is that? Okay, cool. Great.
Why?
Great
Because
news.
I want, unlike some proprietors of Warhammer events, I like to push my wares on people.
Oh, I probably also should be as nice to you as possible. That's what I should do. I'll be nice to you as possible. One fella who's like says I'm mean to you, so now I need to be like, oh, you look so nice. I like your outfit. Where'd you get it from, mate?
You're so kind. You ask me how I'm doing, and then I never ask you how you're doing, and then I just talk and talk and talk. You somehow keep inviting me back. That's great. Even though I, think we're co-hosts, but I do feel like you got to earn your role here. And no, you're also we're of a generation of millennial that only shows love through meanness, and it's my most toxic trait.
Yeah, one of the funniest traits we have.
I think it's hilarious. As did all the kids on the block when I was growing up. So
anyway, nice cape. Where'd you get it? The Cool Cape Guy store?
Careful, you're setting me up. Setting me up for I got it at Amazon.
Oh,
I got it at Amazon.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually,
I wasn't setting you up. I wasn't. I'm sorry.
Jeff Bezos is a vampire, so
My
there
boss.
was lots of capes in stock. Woo!
Ooh.
Is it hot? Is it hot in here, guys? Is it hot? Is it hot in here?
Is this the end? Have we finally reached the conclusion of the Renegades project? Is the mission accomplished?
Well, major combat operations have been concluded. This is the final draft of the Renegade Legacy Pack 2.0 overhaul. Started, I guess, back in March was when we kicked this off.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody, I did take at least I guess it was mid-June when we put down Lizardmen. So over a month. Been working hard on this with great focus for about 2 weeks. I mean, ruminating, always ruminating, but actually nitty gritty for the last couple of weeks. And as far as what happens next, now that we have all of them in at least a 1.0 form, I'm going to go from bottom to top. I'm going to go from basically in order of release. We're going to go through. If it needs to go to a 0.3, it'll go to a 0.3. If it can go to final, it'll go to final. I'm thinking like Ogres and Skaven, probably with the feedback that I've gotten on them so far, they can go to a final draft. Others might go to a 0.2. Obviously, Lizardman needs a 0.2. Anyway, you get how it is. We'll go through them, and we'll just keep circling through them until they're all finalized, hopefully in a timely manner. I'm excited to read about Dark Elves again.
They're so good. My suggestion was make them tough as 4.
I think that's the reasonable move. I think
that's a reasonable move. That's a reasonable move. Well, I'm excited. It's exciting to finally get this out there. For anyone who doesn't know, and first time you've tuned into something like this for some reason, the Games Workshop, when they released Warhammer: The Old World, they left some armies as legacy armies. Val has been rewriting them as renegade armies, basically updating them and giving them more fleshed out rules as a project. This is the last of the series, but also the most arguably controversial, not from what Val has written, but controversial in that they are the most impactful army outside of Cathay, and pre-Cathay, straight up the most impactful army that has existed in Warhammer: The Old World to date, for many different reasons. And so approaching this should hopefully help the regular tournament scene, so that tournaments can have a little bit more equity, even if you're not using the SBC system, because they are a little too strong. So approaching this, any bugbears, any pitfalls, any ideas you went into it with?
Okay, so first and foremost, elephant in the room, Vampire Counts are, either probably top 2 army in the game, up there with Cathay. So this, I think the key here is that it's coming from the same place as the other Legacy Pack 2.0 rewrites have come from, which is it's about bringing this in line with the core game, so that they fit in with the 10 factions that are officially part of the core game, and also it's about bringing in the ability to do different things with them, so they're not so one note. It's about bringing back, actually, even with Vampire Counts, a lot of the lost flavor that is missing from previous editions. Vampire Counts, ever since the Undead were split into dry and wet versions, Tomb Kings and Vampire Counts have had just a lot of legendary army books. They are borderline my favorite faction. I said I was going to get a picture of my shelf just to show you how deep the old collection is. But it's deep. It's vast. I love Vampire Counts so much. And I played them a ton, actually, all the way through, I guess, the second year of the game, leading into 1.5 was probably my daily driver, was Vampire Counts. I experienced things such as never once losing my Graveguard brick in a game over probably 20 plus games played. Rarely lost a zombie brick in that time. And mostly whenever I was losing units, it was because I just misplayed. I either left something out of invocation range or something like that. And once I had my handle on how the army worked, it was very tough to interact with me in a way that was satisfying for my opponent, for sure. So that's all part of it. But again, the goal here isn't to just nerf Vampire Counts. That 100% is not the goal. This is a Renegade.
Why did you keep sending me all those pictures of Edward from Twilight with like a gun to his head? Right?
That was actually my other costume choice. I just didn't get my makeup and glitter effect together. I was going to go with Sparkly Vampire, but I unfortunately was up almost all night doing the final edits on this because ADHD. However, this is not about putting a gun to Edward's head. It's about actually bringing in more vampires if you want, but also in a way, I think the way that Vampire Counts are currently playing, as in like a lot of those archetypes are still intact. They're here and they're still strong, I think. And so I think the question will be, once people get their mitts on this, is does it actually provide alternatives to the current default build? Or does or is the way Vampire Counts being played just going to continue being the way Vampire Counts are being played? We'll have to see. So yeah, another friendly reminder: this is a draft. Although I have thought extremely hard about this, and I have reached out and interacted with a lot of vampire fetishists out there. A lot of masquerade LARPers have helped me with thinking about this and conceptualizing it. I would say the diagnosis of what the issues are with Vampire Counts, as far as the unfun mechanics are concerned, pretty universal. Didn't really hear anything different from anybody. The remedies, though, is open for debate, and so that's what I'm putting forward. A new way of conceptualizing the army here. And it is quite extensive, and I hope you enjoy at least the thought experiment. And please, don't overreact as best you can, because I think what you'll find is Vampire Counts, emotionally here, guys, Vampire Counts have such an advantage in their res mechanics, the Undead special rule period, even over Tomb Kings, as it stands right now out of the book. And so getting them to Tomb King level, which is an S tier army, or at least an A tier army, I think would be an incredible win. And in exchange for that, you hopefully get a bunch of new interesting toys and abilities that you didn't have before this draft. So that's what I'm proposing to you all. And hopefully with, the same process we've used in with all the other drafts, it gets even better from here. In fact, I know it will be better from here, thanks to the input of the community and even you, Rob.
Everybody overreact. Okay. Everybody overreact. That's what I say. Right. Vampire Counts. Renegade Army List. Draft 1.5.2.1.
Actually, it's 1.5.3.1. Because we went up a tick here. Okay, we're going to do a little live edit.
All right. Okay, I'm ready. I'm excited. It's out there. The end of the Renegade project. Well, not the end of the Renegade project, but the conclusion of the first wave. Mission one. Yes. It's the first
Major
Gulf War.
Combat Operations.
Yeah. It's the first Gulf War. That's where we're at. Okay. With George Sr. All right. For use with Warhammer the Old World. Perfect. Vampire Counts. Take me through it, baby.
I think we can get straight to the Grand Army, which should be after this page. Here we go. Okay. Vampire Counts Legacy Army List. Famously, in the 1.5 the 1.5 Renegade Legacy Pack, which was a much more simple version of all of this, I said no notes. I said, basically, I didn't mess with the army composition list because it was good enough. You could build a lot of interesting things. It wasn't as hamstrung as some of the other ones, but I think with the massive amount of changes that are coming in this document, it behooved me to also adjust some of the restrictions here. So let's have a look. The first thing, right off the hop here, 0 to 1 Vampire Lord, Rob. Little foreshadowing. The Vampire Lord. Is he back? You better believe he's back. We'll see him later. In core.
Oh, wait, he wasn't already here.
No, he was a Vampire Count. So in 6th edition, there were actually 3 flavors of vampire characters. You had a Lord and Hero. Basically, they would take 2 slots. They would take it was a Vampire Lord, and he also took a Hero slot. So he was your top tier guy. Yeah. The mid tier dude was your Vampire Count, which is actually sort of the guy that you had in the original Legacy Pack. Yeah. And then you had the I think he may have been not a Thrall. He may have been an Acolyte or like a Vampire Junior or whatever, the hero level character. Stat line it was identical to the Vampire Thrall. So that was the 3 that you had. And so I guess when they were putting this together, they decided to go more with the mid-tier vampire rather than the top tier, which is reflected in a big drop in his stats and leadership and all that kind of stuff in the original Legacy PDF. So we're restoring the famous Vampire Lord to perhaps a version that you might remember from the bad old days.
Yeah, but they're called Vampire Counts.
The army's called Vampire Counts, sure, and I guess that refers to von Karstein. He's the.
Is he a count?
Well, hold on. Is he
a duke?
I think he was the Elector Count of Sylvania. And then, of course, they figure out he's a vampire. I don't know, something like that.
What's an Esquire? Is that one?
Yes, there's a Vampire Esquire as well. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, I don't even know what an Esquire. You're the British person. You're supposed to know what all these titles mean.
I'm also the working class guy. All I know, I'm meant to run from anyone called a Lord or a Count or an Esquire. Run my little legs off.
Therefore, it's all semantics to you, Rob. They're all the same to me. They're all way up there on Mount
They're all
Olympus.
poshies who need to go against the wall, right? That's
moving forward, there's actually there should be a strikeout here under core, which I forgot to have, which I'll add back in later, which is essentially Graveguard used to require a white lord to be your had to be in your army in order to unlock a unit of Graveguard or Black Knights as a core choice. Mm-hmm. People were suggesting that maybe, and I didn't think this was bad, but the idea would have been to add a White King as the condition, because the White King cannot be the BSB. And This is where we get to the first choose your own adventure here of list building vampire counts. So as soon as you need a white lord who can be the BSB to unlock Graveguard, that basically immediately opens up a package of why wouldn't I do this options, which is essentially a white lord with with a BSB, and then the Helm of Commandment and in a Graveguard brick would use up most of your core points. That would be your core. Created a very, 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 very resilient, almost impossible to kill.
It's just self-fulfilling. It writes itself, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes, it's a very straightforward thing. So when I looked at Tomb Kings, which are the obvious comparison to Vampire Counts, they actually get 0 to 1 unit of Tomb Guard, just without any condition. And so I figured the best way to do this is actually to remove the condition, because now there's at least the option or the possibility of taking a Vampire Thrall BSB if you so choose. Doesn't have to be the White Lord, because you're still probably going to want, you're definitely always going to want a BSB. That's just how undead mechanics work. And then the other issues around Graveguard being the only option in core will be addressed by other things. So we'll get to them when we get to them. Then we're also moving corpse cards from special into core. There is a previous, the first time it showed up actually in 7th edition, the corpse card was a core unit. So this is not something that has never existed like this before. And I think you'll see why I chose to go that way later on when we get into zombies and corpse cards. Pretty exciting stuff. And then down in special.
Let's go.
Down in special, we're removing a lot of the conditional choices. There are a lot of or choices. So, for example, Crypt Horrors and Fellbats were for some reason played against one another. Graveguard and Black Knights were limited in special. Most of the times when I'm redoing these lists, I'm contemplating them using, the Grand Melee and what are the two in the match play guide, and combined arms restrictions in general. So these are things that are going to be over and above those restrictions, is essentially where I wind up. So Graveguard, Black Knights, Crypt Horrors, Fellbats, have your fill up to 4 units in special under those rules. And then if you're just making an open, fun, fluffy list with whatever choices you want, go nuts. Varghulf, 0 to 1 per 1,000 points in special. So this one is a departure, certainly from the way things have been in the past, but I think it's an essential one to give the Varghulf a chance at being played, because the Varghulf essentially was one of the only rare choices for a long time for Vampire Counts. You essentially had the Varghulf, you had the Black Coach, and then they added the Terrorgeists, the Vargheists, and suddenly the Varghulf was a distant choice. And also, of course, you had Blood Knights as well that came in, I believe, 7th. I don't think they were even an 8th edition option. I believe they were 7th. So basically, Varghulf got crowded out of rare and was never really an interesting option. I think 0 to 1 per 1,000 points in special is just fine. He's described as sort of a leader in the lore of, or at least something that Crypt Horrors look up to. He's sort of a mangy vampire. He's not like a crazed, fully animalistic version of them like you see with the Vargheists. So I think in special, with a limit of 1 per 1,000, I think maybe gives the Varghulf more of an opportunity to see play, as well as some significant buffs that he gets later on. 0 to 1 unit of Spirit Host per Cane Wraith or Tomb Banshee taken. That's just as it was. And then here's something added in here, which is if your general is a Vampire Lord, 0 to 1 Blood Knights may be taken as a special choice. So that allows you to, go for a Blood Host, something that's like heavy leaned into Blood Knights, and could be an interesting way of doing that. Because right now, if you take 1 unit of Blood Knights, they're pretty much taking up your rare selections. And then this is, again, something that's always been here, but I didn't notice until I was going through this, which is if your general is a Strigoi Ghoul King, 0 to 1 Vargheists or 0 to 1 Terrorgeists may be taken as a special choice. And again, when we get into the Ghoul King, that becomes more interesting. When we go up, we go back to rare. So rare, again, same theme is seen here. Vargheists, Terrorgeists, Blood Knights are no longer restricted or conditional upon other units. Again, in rare, 25% of your list can be used, and they're limited in general to 0 to 2 anyway by combined arms. So I think that's just fine. Their points, their expensiveness, and those restrictions, I think, take care of it just fine. Black Coaches used to be, I think, 0 to 2 per army, period. So I just made it 0 to 1 per 1,000, which, again, if you're playing a big game, that lets you take more Black Coaches.
Yeah, just lets you scale it if you want to, yeah.
Yeah. The Mercenaries were not actually an option at all for Vampire Counts previously, and so I've added in these guys. This is something we did for Chaos Dwarves too, which was to give them the ability to bring common goblins and orc boys to just sort of maybe replicate old army lists that have been out there that maybe aren't the current main vibe of the army. But this, I think, allows you to simulate the army of Sylvania, which is something from the Storm of Chaos campaign, and I believe also in the 6th edition appendix. So yeah, you can take in as mercenaries, Free Company Militia, or Empire Archers. Those who are keen-eyed would say, "Hey, wait a minute! In the army of Sylvania, they were crossbowmen, not archers." However, I think archers are just like thematically a better fit and more interesting for this army in general. And also, I think the reason they were crossbowmen is because the kit for an archer didn't exist at the time. They were pewter minis that had been phased out. So that's my guess at that. Anyway,
but they're coming back. Don't worry.
They're here. And that, by the way, the way I'm trying to word this, the intention anyway, is that these are the only mercenaries they can take. So things that are able to be taken by any army that is allowed to use mercenaries, like the Badland Ogres, not intended to have. But honestly, if you want to bring some Badland, who cares? I don't really care. Allies. This is just updating the ally charts so that this is basically how Cathay, the language around how Cathay expresses their allies. We're just applying them to all the legacy factions. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's just Tomb Kings of Khemri. I actually don't like this. Actually, Tomb Kings of Khemri was their ally in the legacy PDF, so it was like that from the start. And I don't like it because Vampire Counts and Tomb Kings aren't actually pals until I guess the end times. They're kind of
frenemies.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Tomb Kings blame the Vampirics. Anyway, I don't think it's a very friendly scenario. So I think I want to actually make this like either suspicious or whatever the tier sort of below comfortable allies are. Mm-hmm. I think other good ally fits here might be something like Renegade Crowns. So that way you can have a group of humans that have been co-opted by vampires or whatever. Cool. But that's also represented, I think, more by the Free Company Militia.
Maybe use some like Gen Z lingo and call it like a situation ship.
A situation like with the Tomb Kings?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, no problem. That's what I'm here for.
No changes to the BSB. So that's it. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's good. Could you just kind of remind me and everybody, like the intent behind generally getting rid of so many 0 to 1 restrictions and because that's pretty common across most of Renegades, right? Like, is just cleaning this up. It's so that there's more choices.
Yeah, it just frees up your list building, depending on because of the way the game evolved. For one thing, the legacy PDFs had a lot more conditional choices, a lot more restrictions, period. And then especially if you compare it to something like Tomb Kings, although I didn't go double back to really check it and make sure that I hadn't overcooked it. But like a lot of them have, a lot less restrictions, just period. And again, because of the match play guide, there's sort of like an overarching structure already that imposes these restrictions. So they're basically redundant. Where it comes up, I guess, a little bit more would be if you're using things for Battle March. Mm-hmm. And so maybe there are some that should, like maybe for the Battle March, this is a good job for Rob, actually, is now that we're through all these drafts, going back and looking through and just having that Battle March lens and thinking, well, actually, that shouldn't be allowed to be unrestricted for Battle March. It should be a one or the other, because otherwise they are fairly redundant, especially, the situation of Crypt Horrors versus Fellbats just feels like very arbitrary. I don't really see why.
Yeah.
You have that.
Yeah, no, I understand. No, that's it. Apart from that, good. I'm very excited to find out about the Vampire Lord. My experience of Vampire Counts, as you know, is 8th edition Vampire Counts. So that's just basically the most loaded up, absolute demon that you could ever face, murdering everyone. And hopefully one day you hit him with a cannonball. Was also the dream. So, I'm excited to read that and just to see the other updates generally. But yeah, all seems good. Like, it's such a diverse roster. And I think one of the reasons that, you see that split between wet and dry undead is because it just is such an evocative theme. Like, it's so, I say this a lot with like when I review AOS rules, And also, I kind of feel this when we talk about wood elves to a degree, in the opposite. Sorry, in that sometimes it's just so easy to write a rule. Like with Nurgle, it's just so easy to write Nurgle rules, right?
Sure.
Because it's got so much flavor. Whereas Tzeentch and Slaanesh is much harder because they're more ephemeric kind of ideas to add into like actual impact. But like with Vampire Counts, they're just so broad. Like Undead is just so broad. There's so many things you can add in, and there's so much to lean on and drag from. So there's so much like storytelling that's available there. So it's a big, healthy roster. And then I think the opposite of Wood Elves, because I feel like they've got so much they can do with like tree spirits and everything else, and they do very little with it, right?
Well, I mean, I mean, you don't need to go much further than the fact that like Vampire Counts became 3 different armies in AOS, right? Like it was like that's how much substance there is here, and that makes Grand Army compositions tricky because it's supposed to be like the general, it's like a general representation of it without the Arcane Journal drilling you down. So, for example, like with Tomb Kings, they have a requirement for 1+ priest and 1+ Tomb King or Tomb Prince. And like that's in the character requirement. Considered it here, but I didn't go that way. The armies of infamy then go the opposite way. So there's the royal host that is just Tomb King led without any of the high priests, and then there's the mortuary cult, which is high priest led with maybe a Tomb Prince. So you're able to sort of and then you can really focus on what units are available to armies that are built around those concepts. Because I don't have an intention of getting to arcane journals for these per se. These are meant to just be grand armies that are grand armies. You want to make sure that they remain flexible so that you can build sort of more like your sort of arcane journal heavily themed army of infamy through these. And I think, especially when we start going to look at some of the army special rules, you'll see that it's also much more easy to do now.
Okay. Special rules then.
All right. First moment of controversy. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Also, just before we go any further, just for people who are only watching this point, if I see yellow and I see pink, what am I seeing?
Oh, good point. Yeah, so yellow means that it's under construction, so still being contemplated. Of course, these are drafts. Everything is being contemplated, but that yellow means like definitely is subject to change. Pink means that I've changed it for this draft. And then if you see blue, that blue usually means that it was in the original 1.5 Renegades. So there's not as much blue in this because there weren't as many tweaks to Vampire Counts in the Renegade version.
Okay.
And also I changed some of the ways that some of those modifications were made because I have more freedom now. So the first big change here, this is a departure here. This is Master of the Dead. So one of the big things with the Renegade 1.5 draft that got me in trouble is that I gave the Vampire count at the time +1 leadership to take him from 8 to 9. And the way Vampire Counts work is that the general must be a wizard. At least traditionally, that's how it worked. In the past, that would sort of push you in the direction of having a vampire as your general. It didn't have to be the highest wizard level, but the general had to be a wizard. That also meant that your like badass face bashing vampire that you want to go mixing it up was always at risk of dying and triggering basically army-wide crumble. This is another big undead mechanic where if your general dies, then your army loses the magic that's holding it there on the table, and it starts to crumble away, and it loses things. When Tomb Kings come around, and especially the Tomb Kings of 8th edition, I think also even the 6th edition ones, although I don't quote me on that. They, instead of having it be that the general has to be a wizard, they make it so that the sort of the character that's holding your army up is just your highest wizard level. So it's just the highest wizard, and this is in 8th edition and in Old World, that is the Hierophant rule. So just the highest wizard level in your army is the Hierophant. If that guy dies, then your army starts to crumble. that gives them more freedom to do different things with a Tomb King and the priest. And essentially what I've done here with Master of the Dead is I've gotten rid of what was called the Death of a General rule, which controversial, has been around forever, which forced you to have the general be also your highest wizard level. In Old World, they made it also a little more weird on top of that, because they made it the general had to be your highest wizard level, even if they weren't your highest leadership.
Okay.
So that made things a little clunky for list building and things like that. And so I thought the best way for list building to solve this is to just adopt the Hierophant rule. You separate the two things. Lore-wise, too, I think that makes a lot of sense. A Necromancer in a Vampire Counts army is almost, if there's a vampire present, is subservient to the vampire. So like he's a guy that, the Necromancer's hanging around to try and pick up on necromancy tips and tricks, and is also enthralled by the vampire. They are one of his servants. So it makes sense to me that a vampire might outsource the mental load of keeping the army up on its feet if they aren't entirely focused on being a magicking vampire. This also opens up, I think, some cool list building situations too, because one of the things here is like the White King, for example, at Leadership 9. He's tough to get into the army, and here now you could have a Necromancer who's the Master of the Dead, and then your White King could be the general, and you could have a themed army, like a Barrows themed army, for example, or like you could have like a Krell and Heinrich Kemmler themed army. So doing this, separating them, I think is a better way to do this mechanic. And that's essentially why I went for it. I didn't see the benefit unless you were basically saying the vampire, like a vampire just is always going to be the general and is always going to have that liability, which I think basically also made it so that vampires were less appealing, right? So like it was a disincentivized. It disincentivized you from taking vampires. This way, now you can still have. We'll see. You can still have a powerful casting vampire wizard who might wind up being the Master of the Dead and the general. That's still something that you can do, but now it's a list building choice. Anyway, that's it. That's the whole thought there.
Okay. Yeah. No, I can understand that. I think, yes, I'm sure some people will respond to this, very calmly. But I do. It does make sense. Like my initial reaction is, oh, you kill the vampire, you kill the army, right? Like that's how I know it from 8th edition as a thing. But ultimately, like Wood Elves is always my touchstone for this. I think they should rethink the idea of Wood Elves being a ambushing army, right? I think they should rethink that, right? They should rethink dwarfs being so slow. I think there's some elements that can be rethought through in a new world, and I think this is a good example of something similar. Like the idea, effectively, it is the undead. It's the undead that you know, but it's not the undead that you know. It's the undead, but with a single character that's incredibly linchpin. And actually, yes, maybe that's how it would work in the lore. Maybe, but I don't think that's the case. Like you say, there could be, like someone is just pointing out in the chat. One of the most famous stories at the end times was the fact that Nagash was being raised back by Arcan. So a much more powerful necromancer was being raised by his necromantic thrall, right?
Yeah.
So there's scope. And also, ultimately, you want people to be able to build in themes multiple different armies out of the roster. That's what you want. And the other version stopped that.
Yes, and it made the logjam of balancing wizard levels and leadership and who wound up being the general, and also restricted who you could take. And like I said, mostly disincentivized bringing vampires, which is also what happened in 8th edition, by the way. Well, if you wanted to be risk averse, vampire counts in 8th look a lot like current, like end of 8th vampire counts. Well, until you get to the Black Knight buses era, but like mid to late vampire counts of 8th edition looked a lot like current vampire counts. And they didn't have necessarily the Blender Lord vampire and things like that. Something also too to consider here. This is the way I decided to go, but the version before this was to adopt what they did in 8th edition, which is that essentially they made it so that it was still the general was highest leadership and wizard. So if it was the vampire and they died, you would do a round of the crumble, but then it could go to a backup wizard. So this was something that Tomb Kings didn't have, and this was an 8th edition thing only. So essentially, the backup wizard would like take up the load of animating the army, and then like it wouldn't happen at the start of every turn. They would take over that role. They wouldn't become the general. They would just be stopping things from crumbling until they died, and then the crumbling would continue. So that is an option to go here, but to me that still might be enough of a disincentive to kill off vampires, which we're trying to add back and like make an appealing choice. So we'll see. Again, it's a draft, but that is the way I would go as the alternate road, which is, it's the general is the highest leadership. That is a wizard. And then after that, if they die, you do a round of crumbling, and then it can go to the backup wizard, like it worked in 8th edition. I think that's the next nicest thing, which is I think what they did as sort of a compromise over not making them the same as Tomb Kings. But because so many of these mechanics also, folks, are identical between Tomb Kings and Vampire Counts, which is also why you're not going to see significant changes to some of the undead mechanics. If you might be hoping for that, like with the BSB, this is the identical style of BSB where you reroll any leadership check and it gives you D3 Indomitable. That's a Tomb King rule. So I'm not going to change that to make it different for these guys. So bringing them in line isn't that beyond the pale of pretty much every other major undead rule that they have.
Okay, cool. Next up.
So next up, I think an important one here is Dark Vitality. So models with the special rule are not affected if the Master of the Dead for your army is slain. So that's just saying they don't crumble. Furthermore, unless they have joined. Okay, so they can march. Basically, these are for the living units. In previous versions of fantasy, it was called Vampiric. Was it, and they changed it to Dark Vitality, which to me was obscure enough that I've now used Dark Vitality in a number of more interesting places to give some identity to things, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. I've added accursed weapons here. This is just the your hand weapon is better special rule that most armies have. Up until now, it was only a rule that the Blood Knights have, but it's been given to a couple of appropriate units. I think there's no other changes over here. Implacable Defense, Indomitable X, perfect. So let's get to Invocation Nehek, because this is one that I think is interesting.
Yeah.
So as mentioned, there's very little difference between Tomb King's Invocation of Nehek and Arise, which is the Tomb King's one is Arise. And this is how you get models back. This is basically the resurrection rules mechanic generated off of leadership. So all that remains unchanged. But I think there's some significant tweaks here that hopefully address some big issues with the balance. I also noticed that there is a slight difference between the Legacy PDF and the Tomb King's Invocation and the Tomb King's Arise and Invocation of Heck, and that was swarms for Vampire Counts were actually in the second tier rather than in the first.
Okay.
And that was so that there was already a slight difference between the two, and that opened up, I think, the opportunity to make an adjustment for Vampire Counts. So one thing is that the reason I think Swarms was different here for Vampire Counts is because you have spectral hosts, so swarms of ghosts. And so that's why I think they wanted to reduce that, but I addressed that later on here. And then I think the biggest one is that Tomb King's heavy infantry is not obviously as big of a deal to the game as Vampire Counts are. So I think I've emphasized that by moving heavy infantry to the third tier. So it just means that when you res them back, this is Graveguard. This is the only unit that it applies to. When you raise back Graveguard, now it's just the wizard level, plus any bonuses that you might be able to get through items and things like that. So that's why the troop type heavy infantry has moved there. So that's going to reduce the amount that they can be brought back. And I think that's also more fair because they're just a more expensive infantry units compared to that. So like the value you get from it is less. And then I think to address something that Tomb Kings don't have, which is models that are not fully dead, is to add a rider for Dark Vitality and Ethereal. Previous versions of Invocation of Nehek carved out or reduced the effectiveness of Invocation of Nehek for things that were Vampiric and Ethereal. So they were harder to bring back. And so the rule here is if the unit has the Dark Vitality or Ethereal special rule, the unit recovers half the amount of wounds as described above, including any bonuses, rounding fractions up. And I think that does a lot to, for example, reduce the amount that you can get back on Blood Knights. Because that would be a big one when you're resing them back. That helps with restoring wounds on, again, the Spirit Hosts. I think they're close to a wash using this by bumping them up to the top tier. Also that reduces significantly how many of the Hex Wraiths you can bring back. And also Dark Vitality units like vampires themselves, they're still going to be able to recover a single wound if they're on a mount or whatever, because half of one is half, rounding up gets you back to one. So that's the goal there.
Okay, cool. All right. And obviously you are like in some way also locked by what Tomb Kings can also do, right?
Yes. So I don't know. I don't want to be too high on my own supply, but this feels fairly clever as a way of keeping it very close. Keeping it very close to Tomb Kings, but allowing some modification to it. Sorry, I was just reading something in chat there, which is a good call, which is if you have a mixed unit, if you have someone with Dark Vitality in a unit that is being Invocation of Nehek, I'm going to have to definitely write some interactions for that. But I guess the goal would be that they can only restore half as many wounds until they're restored. But we'll figure that out. Good call, chat. Thank you. The Newly Dead. So this one is the rule that zombies have. It's basically before it was that it could only go to the maximum unit size. And here I've just changed that so that it's by an additional 20 models. This just changes the way some of the units can then be presented. So we'll see that when we get to zombies, especially. Spectral Steed. So the Spectral Steed got stolen from everybody else in the army and just was given to the Hex Wraiths as their like default mount. They used to always ride skeletal steeds and then were also fully ethereal. In previous versions of the game, a Spectral Steed allowed you to move as though you were ethereal, but not have any of the other ethereal benefits. So you had a ghost horse, but you yourself were not ethereal, and also ignore barding. This basically returns the movement benefit of having a Spectral Steed, which hopefully is a boon or a little bit of a boost to the Black Knights. And then finally, we get to the Hunger. The Hunger was a special rule that was originally just part of the Strigoi. Ghoul King just allowed him on a 6. If he caused any wounds on a 6, he could regen some wounds. Again, he's a Dark Acolyte, and so wanted to juice up the Hunger. So now it's at the end of a combat phase in which a unit with a special rule caused 1 or more unsaved wounds. Roll a d6 for each unsaved wound caused. For each roll of a 5+, the unit recovers 1 lost wound following the rules for resurrecting the fallen. However, a model with the Behemoth troop type may only recover a maximum of 1 wound per phase in this manner. In addition, if a unit with a special rule wishes to pursue or overrun, it must make a leadership test. If this test is failed, the unit still pursues or overruns, but rolls a single d6 to determine the distance moved rather than the usual 2d6. So that's just modifying the downside of the Hunger as it was originally written. And this is a way of taking those Ghoul type units and giving them a way to return wounds that's thematic and will probably need to be massaged for edge cases and things. But that's the idea behind the Hunger, is to make it more relevant for those types of units because it gets added to a couple.
Okay, fab.
Oh, wow. I forgot I had to talk about Wailing Dirge. Okay, so under the Renegades legacy, how are we doing here? You doing good?
Doing good.
Ongoing and informed consent, Rob. That's what we're all about here on Square Based.
Doing good. My genuine feeling so far is I see nice quality of life stuff, but I don't feel anything's weaker. So I'm waiting for that. Does that make sense?
You want blood?
Oh, like a true vampire. Okay.
We'll get to it, I guess. Well, Wailing Dirge, I guess, would be the first thing. So Wailing Dirge, as it was written,
stupid rule,
was basically written as a bad port from the versions of it that existed in previous edition. Wailing Dirge has been around on the Banshee for a long time. The Terrorgeist and then the Mortis engine get it, and so it has been an existing rule for a while, and has always mechanically worked similarly. And has also had some like confusion over the years over contextually when you can and can't use it and that kind of stuff. So my goal here is to make it more straightforward and also make it less of a uninteractive and unrisky mechanic to use. So this might be a little controversial. In fact, I know it will, because when I said that you couldn't scream out of a combat you're in at something outside of the combat, I ruined Vampire Counts. So like. That was for the Legacy PDF 1.5, sorry, 1.0. Ruined, like Wailing Dirge is useless. Can't use it anymore. It's been nerfed so badly. It's dumb. So it's
such a sensationally toxic rule. Like as it was originally like intended, like you're just shooting in combat, out of combat, things are just dying to something that costs like 70 points or whatever.
90,
so
yeah,
like whatever, yeah. like anyone who's complaining about that just doesn't know what they're talking about. So it's fine.
So Wailing Dirge X is the first change. So that means being able to essentially change the modifier that Wailing Dirge has built into it. Mm-hmm. One way that we could have gone with Wailing Dirge, for the record, is the way it exists in the core game is like in Beastmen, there just is no built-in leadership penalty. It's just a leadership test, and if you as much as you fail that unmodified leadership test, that's how many wounds you take. The Vampire Counts version has always had a leadership penalty built into it. So I think it is appropriate to keep it. But anyway, let's get into it. A model with a special rule may make a Wailing Dirge attack. And here's the first step. We're actually going to define what that is. A Wailing Dirge attack is a shooting attack with the magical attack special rule and a range of 8 inches. So nice. That's something that some of that was not clear. A Wailing Dirge attack can target an enemy lone character regardless of the usual rules for targeting lone characters, which used to be just a note at the bottom. We're just putting it in the body of the text. And then if this model is engaged in combat during the shooting phase, it may target a unit in base contact with a Wailing Dirge attack and may do so even if it charged this turn. So what that means is if you, right now rules is written, I believe raw, because they don't define it as a shooting attack. If you charge, you can still do it in that round of combat. And if you're just using it as it was written in the original Legacy PDF, you can charge into a unit and shoot somewhere else. You can fail a charge and still shoot it. And so I know, for example, Comfac ruled it that it was a shooting attack. So that way, if you charged with a unit that had Wailing Dirge, you couldn't use the effect. I think that actually is a bad move. And the reason why I think that's a bad move is because that discourages you from ever committing the model that has Wailing Dirge. It means that you have to like basically keep it out of combat in order to use the Wailing Dirge unless it's charged itself. Mm-hmm. So you can't really use it as an offensive weapon. The other issue with being able to shoot into an ongoing combat with Wailing Dirge, especially with something like Vampire Counts as the army, is that essentially you have this unkillable anvil of a tar pit holding up a unit, and then you can just stand around it with a bunch of Wailing Dirges and absolutely nuke whoever happens to be stuck in combat with your Graveguard or a block of zombies or what have you. Mm-hmm. By making them, by removing the ability to shoot into a combat, but allowing them to use it in a turn that they charge, that means that if you want to do that, you still can, but now it's risky. So like now you are having to risk the unit in combat. It's making it so that Wailing Dirge is vulnerable to being obviously attacked. Mm-hmm. in general, multiple combats for vampire counts or undead in general is dangerous if you lose the combat, because each one of those units then will start to crumble. So this adds risk to Wailing Dirge shooting into combat, and I think is the core awful. I'd say it's the most feel bad part of Wailing Dirge is the fact that you're in combat trying to fight and you're still suffering crazy amounts of damage from outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, one of the biggest problems with Wailing Dirge. I think this helps to correct that while retaining the power of it, and that's basically the idea.
I agree. Also changes stand and shoot to stand and shout. Well,
actually, there were. I did notice that. I think the Banshee used to be able to stand and shoot, but obviously the undead are immune to psych, and they can only elect to hold.
True.
So they cannot stand and shoot. So
or stand and shout.
Or stand and shout. Although I don't know, maybe we add that back.
No, please don't add that. Please don't add that.
And then just cleaning up some of the language. So a Wailing Dirge attack does not roll to hit and wound as normal because it's a shooting attack. Just clarify that. Instead, the target must make a leadership test with a negative modifier to his leadership characteristics shown in the brackets after the name of the special rule, shown here as X. So that's just adopting the X rules. And then I just kept a note at the bottom that a Wailing Dirge attack may reduce the target's leadership characteristic to a minimum of 2. So that's just so that you can't bottom them out to 0. But there you go. That's the approach to Wailing Dirge, and we'll see what other things are done. What do you think of that as a way of toning down Wailing Dirge without killing it, or do I kill it if I do this?
No, you don't kill it. I also would have taken out that it can do it if it's in combat at all. So like you're already like a step above where I would have been. Like it's like, why does it get to do it over literally everyone else in every way? Like,
because in combat it becomes its like that's its weapon, right? Like,
it costs
so
points. It can literally nuke units, and it costs nothing. So
it costs nothing.
It costs nothing.
The other thing to bear in mind is that like I think Wailing Dirge has already been reduced a lot in its effectiveness because of changes to necromancy, and the amount of instances of negative modifiers you can have on the table at one time. Mm-hmm. So I think that like the fact that the vortex negative modifier doesn't stack anymore, and also just the fact that those are harder to get off, period. So like the debuffs to leadership. So I think there was already like a reduction in the effectiveness of Wailing Dirge. Mm-hmm. But I think for your average player, it's just so frustrating that you're standing there trying to fight and someone's screaming in your ear. Basically, now they have to join the fight to scream in your ear. Moving it to a combat attack would then allow Wailing Dirge to be part of combat resolution. So like that is an option where it becomes if you're in combat, then you use it in the combat phase. That's a maybe to me. If we find that this does kill Wailing Dirge, then that's a way of doing it, because then it would actually add to the combat result. Here it's just damage. So it's more like grinding wheels. No, I think that's a stomping attack now. But once upon a time, like the steam tanks grinding wheels wasn't like a stomp attack. It was something that happened outside of the combat phase, so it didn't count for combat res, if I recall correctly. Anyway, I think this is a good starting place. Again, it still has unique abilities in its ability to target lone characters. It's still ruthless if you stack it with the negative modifiers. Munisec does not stop, stand, and shoot. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I thought you
stand and shout is back on the table, baby.
Or maybe it's the undead special. Can you scroll up for me?
I can do. Just for a moment. Do you mind looking and talking to the chat a second yourself? I just need to quickly go to the loo.
Of course. Just scroll up to the undead and then go to the loo.
Okay. All right. Where do you need me?
Right there. Models with special rule are undead. Undead models cannot march unless special rule. Choose to move by flying edition. All undead models have the following special rules. Oh, wow. So that was thank you for pointing that out, chat. I definitely confused my editions of the undead rule. In a previous one, it used to say that they can only elect to hold as a charge reaction rather than this. Yes, I agree. I agree that you can 100% stand and shoot with undead, which would make sense because obviously Tomb Kings do that a ton. I just didn't think it through entirely. So thank you for catching that. I'll fix it up. That's an easy one. Okay, chat, here we go. Should you be able to stand and shoot with a scream? Should I change it? I don't know. Maybe not.
We're going to do magic items.
So once again, magic weapons are completely overlooked. I won't lie to you. I don't think I even read these more than once. And so I might have to come back to these guys in a point too, so don't be super pissed, everybody. But I think, well, you'll see with the vampire. I make up for it in vampiric powers, I promise. And also, we'll need to see how that all plays out before coming back to tweak these anyways. Not that was my plan. That's just how things worked out. Mm-hmm. Getting over to magic armor, similar situation here. Didn't look at them super duper closely. I think there's definitely room. Just about everything in the book that they chose to represent with in the legacy PDF were things that existed in like multiple editions in the past. Sometimes you didn't see that. Sometimes you would see like items that were in 6th and then never again would be brought back for the legacy PDF. Here, these are a lot of the chestnuts of Vampire Count items over the years. I guess on this one, there's a couple of big ones on this page, but let's start with the Von Karstein ring because it's cool as hell, and I wanted to go over it. Right now, the way it originally existed, sorry, I should have kept the strikeout version of it, but whatever. The way it originally existed was on a roll of 2+. When you lose your last wound on a roll of 2+, you get that wound back, and you come back from the dead, and the ring is destroyed. It's single use. That was 40 points. So to me, it wasn't really an ability worth 40 points. And so I thought, though, that if you comboed that with 5-up ward save against all wounds suffered, it becomes kind of a neat item that is also kind of handy. So this is what it becomes. Vampires only. The bearer of this item is a 5+ ward save against all wounds suffered. In addition, if the bearer loses their final wound, it is removed from play as a casualty. Shout out to regeneration rules. So it needs to be removed. So this is after regen, basically. Roll a d6. On a 2+, the model immediately is returned to play. Place the model back in the exact position it occupied prior to being removed with 1 wound remaining. Obviously, you're not going to pick up the model before you roll your 2-up. You're going to leave it there, but it has to be like that so that it's after all regen saves have been exhausted. By the way, I meant to mention regeneration way earlier than this, but I'm contemplating all of how regeneration works in this version of it, assuming it's one at a time. That is the way I believe it will go. If it changes, then we'll have to view this maybe a little bit differently, but that is the way I think it will go. Mm-hmm. And then once the resurrection ability has been used, the Von Karstein ring is destroyed and its effects are lost for the remainder of the game. So basically, if you come back to life, you lose your ward save, which I thought was a neat thing.
I think that's neat.
So let's get to Magic Standards. There's not a lot changed here, but I think they are significant. So the Drakenhof banner goes from 50 points to 60 points, which is a big deal because that means that it has to be carried by a BSB. Mm-hmm. And if it's carried by a BSB, that means that you can kill it. So now it's interactive. So now if you want to have this buffing your unit of Graveguard, or if you want to have it buffing a unit of Blood Knights, whatever you want to put it on, it's vulnerable to getting killed. As of right now, you always put it on the unit because it's 50 points, so it can be taken by a unit that can take a Magic Standard, and it's just invulnerable. It just gives them the +1 regen save forever. This adds interactivity without stealing it away. Originally, I had it at 55 points, but I think it's worth 60. So there you go. And then the next one is the kind of the flip side of this, which is Banner of the Barrows. It was originally the 65-point big-time banner, but I think that it actually, despite sounding good at face value, is kind of a ho-hum thing, especially with Drakenhof banner competing. So lowering it to 50 points opens it up. You could put it on skeletons. You can, or now you can put it with the unit. So it can be on the standard bearer of a Graveguard unit or a Black Knight unit. That's the idea there. And cannot be taken by a unit with the Dark Vitality special rule. Just keeps it out of the hands of Blood Knights. Not that you probably want to do that, but just thematically, it's the Banner of the Barrows. It's for skeletons. That's who's supposed to be able to use it. Mm-hmm. Finally, the Screaming Banner, just lowering its points. Oh, we're getting into Danger Zone.
Okay.
Helm of Commandment, 40 points, folks. Look really closely. So yes, basically the modifier here goes from D3 to +1. Otherwise, it is exactly the same, and it's 40 points. People are probably going to start screaming bloody murder over this. This is part of that combo kit for the White Lord. Basically, in a unit of Graveguard that takes them from weapon skill 3, and then you add D3, so that can get them all the way up to weapon skill 6. And then you Van Hal's Dance Macabre, or the other one. I can't remember. I might be mixing them up. Either way, the one that allows you to add to weapon skill, you could get them to weapon skill 9.
Wow.
Which is insane and a little bit too stacky. The almost identical item to Helm of Commandment in Tomb Kings is +1 to the weapon skill, and it's 50 points. So because this one at least has like a symbolic leadership check, because you're probably re-rolling it, and also because Vampire Count should have nice things, I kept it at 40 points. But if we were just to look at the core game, this ability is worth 50 points, and it's a +1 modifier, not plus D3. I still think this still gets the Graveguard to a break point of like a 4 weapon skill 4 is a very useful break point for defense. And then with magic, you can still get to weapon skill 7, which is another big break point. So it's still very good, guys. I have to say this. It's still a very good combination. It's just not stupidly good like it was before, and that's the goal of that nerf. I think it's reasonable, and I guess
I think it's super reasonable. The weapon skill chart's fine. Like the weapon skill chart in Old World is a very gentle weapon skill chart. But there are obvious breakpoints that are important, just to be clear. But like it's a very comfy chart versus other game systems.
Mm-hmm. And and I still think the combo is worthwhile. So anyway, I guess we'll be either proven right or wrong on this point, but I think that's a reasonable nerf for Helm of Commandment, backed up by the core armies. There you go. Hand of Dust. Originally, this was just Necromancers, and as a result, I think it didn't really get used much. But tossed it out to whites only. Also reduced it to a power level of 1. To match similar items like this. I was also tempted to drop it to an 8+ to cast, and in fact, I think I will. But
it's an amazing spell.
That gets it to go. Like right now, it's going off on an 8. That's before any MR is factored in, so it might just be impossible, and no one ever uses it. So dropping it down to a 7+ might be a better place, which would still make it harder to cast than say a Hammerhand. There's a lot of items out there that have Hammerhand built in. Hand of Dust, actually, just to spark an idea. Actually, I'll talk about it in a second when we talk about the lore of Undeath. And then the next big one here is the Scepter of De Noiro, which of course means Scepter of Noiro. So I am deleting the of, so that it's not the Scepter of De Noiro. Someone pointed out that might mean the person's name is De Noiro, but the original version of this, I think from 7th edition, was Scepter De Noiro. So that's why that's been fixed. Folks, this used to allow you to cast Invocation of a Heck twice in a row, basically. And on a 1, you took a wound that you really just didn't give a shit about. That is incredibly powerful. It allows you to bring back so many dudes. It makes recursion overwhelming, basically also is essentially if you do manage to fail your double leadership check, gives you another attempt at it, a third attempt, even if you do take a wound. So it is fairly cooked. In Tomb Kings, they do not have that one. They have the Hieroptic Jar, I believe, which allows you for 25 points to do that once. It's a extremely common magic item, so you can buy multiples of that, but you pay 25 points to do that once in Tomb Kings. The Scepter of De Noiro, though, is now following their one of their staffs. So they have an enchanted item. Sorry, they have I think it's either an enchanted item or a talisman, which has this ability, which is priests only, but in here it's Master Necromancer only. When the wielder of the Scepter de Noiro uses the Invocation of Heck special roll on a friendly unit whose troop type is infantry or cavalry, roll an additional D3 when determining how many wounds are recovered. So that just mirrors the other one. The way it's worded is intended so that if it's on a dark vitality unit or an ethereal unit, that means you're adding the D3 and then still dividing it by 2. That's my intention. If that's not how it reads, please let me know. But yeah, that's what I did with the Scepter de Noiro. What do you think of the nerfs on this page? This is almost all bad news except for Hand of Dust, maybe.
Yeah, good. Like, obviously, like, the scale on these things is ridiculous. Basically, anything that's a 2x action in any game system is never accounted for correctly. Like, a fight twice, a move twice, like, a shoot twice. It doesn't work in the scale of the setting. And because of how things are normally compounded together. So this is great, especially for Du Noir. The of is actually probably my favorite change. It's so petty and therefore it's perfect. And then the +1 modifier to weapon skill, it's like it takes it from outrageously unreasonable before to just like also good. Like also good. If that's what you're looking for. So many other armies have nothing even close to those number modifiers in their roster. Like, it's ludicrous.
Or just something that works so perfectly with a negative that the army has. Like, right? Like, so like that's the Graveguard of Weapon Skill 3. And that's why there has been the, Banner of the Barrows to get them to hit on 3s. Right? Like that's the thing the game gives you for that. The writers originally and in other versions of the game made that banner very expensive to get them to be able to hit on 3s. And that doesn't even factor for the defensive value of raising your weapon skill up to crazy, crazy heights, because that means you can't be hit. It's another reason why it's impossible to kill a unit of Graveguard. So now they're going to be weapon skill 4, and then up to weapon skill 7. Still very hard to hit. Very, very high. Just not 9. So that's where we're at with that. And the Scepter de Noiro, I think is... I think it's fair. Again, it reduces the total availability of Invocation of Nehek in your army. So like resing in general is reduced in the amount that you can do just with your old list. So now you have to start thinking about how much resing do you really need. Scepter de Noiro, by the way, compared to that staff, is I think 15 points cheaper. And the main reason for that is that I kept it... Actually, I didn't even think about taking it out, but in discussing it, I think one good reason for that is as an arcane item, it is a bigger trade-off to take it now.
Yes.
So like you are giving up something to take the scepter over something like Skull Staff or a not that you ever take it with Vampire Counts, but the one that lets you know all the lore. Lore familiar?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it.
Good. That's great. That's good. These are all positive changes. These are healthy, good, positive changes to the game. Great work. Everybody's happy.
Oh, yeah. Everyone is. They're dancing in the streets. Vampiric powers. All right. Here's some just unadulterated good times here, folks. Let's go. So when I did the analysis of like the source, can you just scroll down a little bit more?
Sure, boss.
Get them all in the... Nice. So when I did the analysis of like, where did the ones that they picked come from? I think 3 of them, I think there were 7 of them and like 3 were Strigoi. I've tried to add back now. There were none from Blood Knights. And if memory serves, I guess, there was a Necrarch. So those are the bloodlines. So I haven't touched on this. Obviously, didn't go back to bloodlines for this. I think bloodlines, if bloodlines are to come back, I think again, they are very much an arcane journal type of a thing. And curiously, too, I don't really understand why. I got to get Jordan Sorcery to go ask somebody about this, but I don't quite get why they went away from it. So, like, they very clearly choose to not do bloodlines when they go from 6th to 7th. The 7th edition Vampiric powers are all themed. It's sort of like what we just saw with the Chaos Gods, where, you have, like, you now have a different word for corn. Yeah. They did that with the Vampiric powers. They didn't have Blood Knights. They had like La Martiale or something like that, right? So like they were all the Vampiric powers that used to correspond to Blood Knights, not named that anymore. They kind of took the bloodlines out of the game, and that, except for Strigoi, Strigoi continued on as its own thing. So I don't really know why they did that, but that was a design choice they made, and they reinforced that again in 8th edition. I'm not saying that's why this is not why I said no bloodlines. I think no bloodlines mostly because that to me is very much like an AOI type thing. That would be a very themed specific list, much like you saw in 6th edition. Each one of the bloodlines had their own sort of army list to reflect the theme of the bloodline. So that to me is an army of infamy, and that's why we're still in the Build-A-Bear style. But we return some really good ones, and I'll be curious to see how things are built with them. And then another thing that's important here is I don't have the brain for all the different computations, combinations, and things like that. Much like with Lizardmen and the disciplines of the Slan, I think in the point 2 is where we can come back and really discover okay, we either this combo would be great, but it's 5 points too expensive, or this combo is too crazy, it needs to be a little bit more expensive. All those little nuances with this menu of options, we'll straighten out in point 2. This is just this is a dart throw essentially off the top. So the first one is Red Fury. This is the Blender Lord ability that made him the Blender. So this currently exists in Old World, by the way, except it's a special rule for the Necrosphinx Colossus. The undead giant and Doom Kings got this rule. And it's like unending assault or something. He can actually attack infinitely. So this is actually less than that. But Red Fury, 50 points. It's been 50 points for the last 2 editions, so I figured that must be okay. Level 1 wizard vampires only. So that means that you can't upgrade beyond a level 1 wizard to sort of reflect that it's rooted in Blood Knights. During the combat phase, for each unsaved wound caused by this model's attacks, it immediately makes 1 additional attack. These additional attacks cannot generate further attacks. So as written, this does really juice up, for example, I don't know if you gave him a multi-wound, weapon and he generated a bunch of unsaved wounds on a unit of plebes, he could definitely blender. We got to see. He's going to be expensive, guys. This guy will be very expensive to have Red Fury and then everything else that you want on him. So he might need to have something like this, but maybe some conditions on Red Fury are necessary in the world of Old World. But versus the version of this that exists in Old Worlds, this does have a condition, which is that it doesn't go forever, which is important. So the next one is
shouldn't be either, right? That's just silly.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. But this, for example, has the ability, as it's written right now, there is the ability to generate more attacks than you started with, if that makes any sense. If you're using if you're using a killing blow weapon, or if you're using a multi damage weapon. Curse of the Revenant. Although actually, I should say that how regen is ruled would also affect this in a big way, because if you lose, if unsaved wounds in excess of how many wounds the model has are wasted, then it wouldn't actually proc so many. So how regen is ruled will also affect Red Fury. Curse of the Revenant, 40 points. This vampire has a +1 modifier to its wounds characteristic. This just used to be 50 points. It was in the original. That is a Strigoi chestnut from back in the day. The next one is one of my favorites, Honor or Death, 35 points. This is an ability they had in 7th edition, and I took the basically as inspiration for this, the rules that Miao Ying has. As one of her, basically it's a challenge mechanic. So any enemy model that wishes to issue a challenge whilst engaged in the same combat as a model with this vampire power must first make a leadership test using their own leadership. Apply a +1 modifier to the dice roll for each point of difference between its weapon skill characteristic and that of the model with this vampiric power, to a maximum of 2. So if you're like a unit champion, it's harder for you to pass the test. If the test is passed, the challenge is issued as normal. If the test is failed, the challenge is not issued, and the enemy model must retire, following the rules for refusing a challenge. In addition, challenges issued by a model with this vampiric power cannot be refused. Pretty dope, I think. And maybe very, very strong, but we're going to find out. But that, again, that gives him protection from one of the biggest issues around big, strong, fighty characters. We'll see what folks say, which is that the champ challenges him and he can't do his job.
That's cool.
Flying Horror, 35 points. Models whose troop type is infantry. Oh, this is an old one. Master of the Black Arts. This is just modified so that this is essentially a Necroc ability. So Necroc are the powerful wizard vampires. And so this is providing the ability to get a vampire count up to a level 4. The reason you put it here instead of as just like being able to buy a 4th power level is that it becomes a vampiric power. It's a trade-off. So it gives you opportunity cost. You're not picking some of the other ones here. That's basically the only reason why you would do that. So you can't have you can't stack a bunch of other things with it because he's less of a other kind of vampire. Dark Acolyte, vampire gains Invocation of Nehek special rule as described on page 5. That's just and then removing the rider it used to have, which was for the purposes of using this rule. The model counts as level 1 wizard. So this does open up the opportunity to have a higher leadership Invocation of the Nehek one. So especially if you combine that with Master of the Black Arts, you would have a leadership 9 re-rolling vampire who can raise dead and stuff. Sure, but it's going to cost 1 billion points. So if that's what you want to do, I think you're paying for the pleasure. Quick Blood is a Elamian vampire power we're returning. Vampire gains the Strike First special rule. Infinite Hatred, 25 points, is an old Strigoi one. The vampire gains the Hatred All Enemies special rule. And then Beguile, just lowering Beguile to, I think, a more reasonable cost for the effect. The other thing interesting, too, about anything that's 25 points or lower is they can be taken by champions in the Blood Knights. So cool. Beguile, there was a concern that the whole unit would be affected, but no, it's just hits against the model. Okay. Supernatural Horror and Lord of the Night are the same. Lord of the Night, I think, is the only explicitly von Karstein power here. Okay. So I don't know. Maybe swap it out for another, and then thematically we're very old world. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
So there you go. What do you think of the vampiric powers? Are they interesting?
Yeah.
Until we're actually list building with them, we won't know how.
Yeah, I think it's fun to kit bash and design a vampire. Yes, 100%. I think this is preferable to me to Bloodlines, especially as right now, or even maybe post Warhammer Fantasy. While the lore maybe hasn't overly been expanded, thanks to Total War, there's a lot more awareness of maybe some of the more esoteric parts of the vampire style lore that are out there. And so I would be less interested in being made to just talk about the von Karsteins again, and instead being able to design my own vampires. It's cool, and it's very much a Warhammer thing. That's my guy, right? I've designed my guy, so I like that. It's fun. Obviously, everybody's going to be excited about doing the Red Fury thing, which is cool because that's what I think people are excited about doing with vampires. I think that's fun.
Yeah. And again, this one they of course need to be tested. And yeah, there might need to be some constraints on them. I'd rather start high because again, we're coming from S tier right now. So I would like them to have potentially S tier abilities that we can dial back to A tier if need be. But I think that's the place to start from, and hopefully people think that's cool. Red Fury plus Spectral Doppelganger, let's go. If you can cast Spectral Doppelganger with a level 1 wizard, good luck. And also you have to buy Lore Familiar for a level 1 wizard. That is why it's like that too, so that you can't stack that stuff with a powerful caster chat. So yeah, Doppelganger and Red Fury, probably not. The question is the Doppelganger casting vampire better than a more of a combat focus Red Fury style vampire? So that is curious. It is possible that you can now build with the other vampiric powers a very reliable Doppelganger vampire that's better. I don't know. We're gonna find out. Lore of Undeath. So this is actually what I wanted to talk to. First and foremost is not a lot of changes here. These are really, really good spells, and they're chestnuts of them. We'll get to Raise Dead in 1 second. But one thought I did have for Vampire Counts, and ultimately stopped because of a couple of reasons, is to return lore of basically the lore of vampires, or as it's called now, the lore of Undeath, to being a full lore. it actually isn't that hard when you look at what used to be in the lore of vampires as far as the spells that are not present. It's basically Gaze of Nagash, it's Cursed Hand, and it's a Bad Vortex. And so you could put together, like, I haven't done full lores or like really done much with magic spells with a lot of the other legacy factions because they feel really dangerous, because they need to be translated to old world, and you either wind up with something that's not in the right power curve because magic used to be so much more powerful, or something that's just not useful because it's a wet noodle. The reason I considered really heavily doing the lore of Undeath as its own lore is because right now you can always pick Van Hell's Dance Macabre or Hellish Vigor or Raised Dead, as we'll find out as being more interesting now. Mm-hmm. And you just always get them, plus whatever good stuff you want to get from your main lore of choice. If you put them into their own lore, then it makes it harder to have all of the necromancy spells you want and Van Hell's Dance Macabre, for example, mm-hmm. right? And it's harder to have two people with both of one with Van Hell's and one with Hellish Vigor.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I figured that would become too much of a nerf, and also would ultimately force people into what happened in 8th edition with that rule, because also in 8th edition, you had to have one on Lore of Vampires. Someone had to have it. What that meant was you needed 2 level 4s, mm-hmm. right? So like you had to have your Lore of Vampires, which was good. You weren't mad about having that, but you also wanted someone on Death or someone on one of the other lores. Mm-hmm. And then I think again you're in a position where you're forcing the vampires to just have necromancers and not have vampires. So that's why I didn't go that way. Although I do think it is a reasonable design avenue and worth discussion about whether or not to make Lore of Undeath its own lore and remove the benefits that it has by being these 3 signature spells. So that's all the background I want to go there. Raised Dead is really the only significant change over the 1.5 version of this. So this is just now going to be place a unit of 2d3 zombies on the battlefield anywhere completely within 12 inches of this model, but not within 1 inch of any enemy models. This unit cannot declare charge during the turn it was raised. Note that units of zombies that are created in this way are not worth any victory points, do not count as core, and are considered to have a starting unit size of 10 models for the purposes of Invocation of Nehek special rule. So there you go. So now you can spawn a unit of zombies up to 6 strong if you roll too high on your thing, and you can raise them up to 10. And then the Risen Zombie profile, where there's like skirmishers, opens up a bunch of annoying things. And so I thought it was better if they were just zombies, because now it's going to be essentially just a ranked formation version of zombies. Mm-hmm. And also one that you can get up to 10 models. And so you could, for example, I guess even with 5, you could blow up a baggage train, but you can contest a quarter. For basically, as far as mission play is concerned, they're only really useful for domination and baggage train. I think that's it. Maybe you guys can point out if I missed something, but they can't, for example, sit on an objective and score it because they're not core. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a lot to talk about with zombies, and we'll get to them in a bit, but this is an important change for them.
Cool. So we're done. Now we're into units.
We've gotten to the first unit. Time. What time is it? Let's have a sip.
Yeah. Let's pause it for a second so you can have a little moment for yourself. We're an hour and 22 minutes into the review.
Holy shit. It's going to be like a 3-hour review. Cool. I'm going to try not to do that to you, Rob. Thanks for hanging in there with me.
That's okay. That was okay.
I am over-explaining. I know you may or may not be happy about that, but
that's okay. That's okay.
There were a lot of ways to go.
Okay.
All right, vampires. Here we go, folks. The Vampire Lord, as was foreshadowed earlier, has returned. One thing that was really fascinating with the Vampire Lord, when I was looking at bringing him back, was like looking at the Vampire Count stat line, first of all, and comparing them to other, combat-y characters out there. I realized that the Duke in Bretonia, that is a new unit for Old World, this is interesting, Rob, is basically a vampire lord from 8th edition.
Okay.
Are they foreshadowing? Are they suggesting that when vampire counts come back, they'll be in Mousselin, and the Duke of Mousselin will be the vampire lord? I don't know. But that is, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it seemed kind of neat. At any rate, returning the vampire lord here, I think, is important. That means that they get jacked up by 1 wound. Then they go up to 5 attacks. They also increase by 20 points to 185. And I've also made all vampire lords a level 1 wizard by default. So they are basically on a tier with the 2 other big bads, in my head being the Duke and the Chaos Lord, both of whom have access to similar things to the vampiric powers and incredibly efficient and cheap items, great mounts. Vampire Lord, I think, also fits into that with them. So that's pretty cool. We'll see how this goes. One thing that when I was looking at pointing him, there's actually a 4th powerful character that's interesting to compare him to, and that, of course, is the Shigengan. Shigengan General, or Lord. I don't know which one the top one is. The Lord, I guess. Yeah. And they basically get their wizard levels for free.
They're very
and
cheap.
They get 2 of them. Their mount is anyway. I don't know how they pointed the Shigengan. It's wildly efficient. So I would say the Vampire Lord, as written at this points level, probably a bit more efficient than your Chaos Lord and your Bretonnian Duke. Way less efficient still than your Shigengan, as far as what you get at the stock points stock points value. So that's sort of where I landed on there. If we scroll down a little bit, other major changes would just be that they can go to a level 3 wizard, and then again to the 4th level if you want to have the Necroc style. And then, of course, the Vampire Thrall now can go to a level 2 wizard. Before they were restricted to level 1, and then the power would get them to level 2. The other major thing is just they just come stock with a cursed weapon, so they have a magical attack, 1 AP, hand weapon attack now. Aside from that, staying the same. Plus all the shit that we just went through. That's where vampires are. Would you take a vampire, Rob?
Yeah, I would. There's so many amazing vampire sculpts. Plus, they're very thematic, right? Like they're a fun themey choice to have some fun with. Plus, obviously, do some Red Fury, do some attacks, 5 attacks, stick it in a unit. You can just really add to some combat res for some pretty unkillable blocks, which is pretty spicy.
I think with 4 wounds, like obviously the mount options. So like you basically have an Abyssal Terror, which is a clone of the Wyvern. So really a pretty expensive mount for what it is, compared to some newer stuff. And then of course you have the Zombie Dragon, which is he's probably a very mid-tier dragon, compared to some of the best dragons out there. And then I think one cool thing about having the Vampire Lord at 4 wounds, though, is that you can think about putting him on a horse, like a Nightmare, and then having your Blood Dragon romping around with Blood Knights. It would be a risky play, but at least I think that option is there now for him. So yeah,
that's good. That's very good. I mean, again, just like any of the really famous lords, like a dwarf lord or like an orc boss or whatever, like they should be super highly customizable, right? Because you're building the general for your army. That's the plan, right?
Yeah, and then also contemplating this guy with the 25% restriction for any unit from the match play guide is another thing to think about. So like he's going to have way more things you want to spend on him than you're going to be able to fit into 500 points, especially if he's on a dragon. The Abyssal Terror might become popular. Who knows? Or maybe he just still isn't popular. I don't know. We'll have to find out. Okay. Moving on. So that's the original Death of a General rule that just got removed and replaced. Necromancers. No real changes here, except for the fact that I'm pretty sure they used to be 120 points, which is 10 points less. Sorry, which is 20 points less than what a Tomb King High Priest was. Yeah, and then like what 35 points less than a Archmage from High Elves. I really wanted to put him at the 155, but when I saw that a High Priest is also priced very competitively compared to other casters, I put them to 145. The Necromantic Acolyte at 60, I think puts him again in a very like a little bit more expensive than the Tomb King. What's the word? Mortuary priest, I guess. Yeah, there you go. So that's it. So no real changes, Necromancers, but lots of changes, of course, to what they're able to do through their special rules and stuff. All right, here's the big bad Strigoi Ghoul King. So we were talking about how there used to be 3 different tiers of vampire. There was the Vampire Lord and the Vampire Count. The Strigoi Ghoul King, I think, actually, and I didn't even notice this, is the tweener guy. He was, as originally written into this army list, he was placed a little bit cheaper, 20 points cheaper than the Vampire Count was. He has that 75 point allotment instead of the 50 for the heroes tier or 100 for the highest tier. So he is the sort of in between guy. But it's hard to have thought of ways or reasons why you might have taken him. And so that's what I'm hopefully trying to address a little bit here by improving the hunger, and also with the tweaks to how Dark Vitality works. But essentially, gave him Wicked Claws, so he has AP2 built in now. Scaly Skin, so he's got a heavy armor, like an armor save. I think that's really essential for all the Crypt guys. And then you can make him a wizard. I don't think it's an essential part of his identity, but you could make him a wizard if you want him to. And then, you can build a bear with 75 points of items. Ghoulkin is old vampiric power for Strigoi, which gave them the ability to march before the game started. And I thought it would be a cool base rule for him have. So model with the special rule is your general. All Crypt Ghouls, Crypt Horrors, and Varghulfs gain the Vanguard special rule. So that means that if you make the Strigoi Ghoul King your general, then you unlock Vargheists or like a unit of Vargheist or a unit of Terrorgeist in special. So that's interesting. And then you also gain Vanguard for all the little scrambled along the ground guys. So these mostly, and he gets Vanguard built in. Mostly just what I thought of as hopefully flavorful, interesting things. I don't know if he's going to burn the world down, but maybe he's worth building an army around. Maybe you can make a Crypt Ghoul, like what are they in AOS again? Flesh Eater. I mean, you can make a Flesh Eater court style army maybe around this guy now.
That's a fun idea. That's really, really fun. Very cool. Very ghoul.
Very ghoul. And also something to bear in mind that he is not a vampire. He is a vampire, but in the vampiric powers, some of those powers and items, like the Von Karstein ring, call out that it's a vampire. And the vampire refers to the Lord and the Thrall. So something to bear in mind. For example, he could not get Red Fury, even if he was a level 1 wizard. Karen Wraiths stay the same.
Woohoo!
Whites. The whites. All right, so whites. Very little changes here. In fact, the only significant one is the White Lord, for some reason, was 40 points. I don't know how he was 40 points. It seemed absurd that he was 40 points. He was incredibly cheap and basically a no-brainer to take. So the White Lord goes up to 60 points. The White King, I think people out there are probably going to be like, there's still no reason to take a White King. Well, he's still pretty damn good. And I think he's a good thematic choice. So he can be your general now because of the change to the Death of a General rule becoming Master of the Dead. So you can do a Heinrich Kemmler Krell type themed list if you so wish and make it very Barrows themed. But yeah, they are no longer conditional choices, and I think are pointed closer to a fair level for what you get for them, the chassis you get. And also, I don't know if I mentioned, but removing the White Lord as the condition for the Graveguard also means you might consider a Vampire Thrall as your BSB. I think you still take the White Lord as your BSB, but you might think about it. I don't know.
You might do. Cheap enough.
Mm-hmm. Any other things there? No white banners.
Wailing Dirge
Tomb
-1.
Banshees.
Oh.
So here we go. Tomb Banshees, only change Tomb Banshees is their Wailing Dirge is less powerful. So they go down to a -2 penalty on their Wailing Dirge. I think for an annoying little ethereal character that can get into nooks and crannies, I think that is a fair nerf to her. Maybe she's dead. Maybe no one ever touches the Tomb Banshee again. I don't know.
Okay. For anyone who's not a vampire fan who's listened to this point, would you add a Tomb Banshee into your army for 90 points? And I think the answers would be yes.
The other thing too that won't be apparent until list building starts to happen, but like the bog standard 2,000 point vampire count maximum efficiency list right now is basically on the numbers 1,000 points of characters. So with necromancers being more expensive, with the White Lord being more expensive, there's just less room to maneuver with that default build, and there will have to be things given up. Even though like a lot of the items that you chose are the same, it's just there will have to be some different choices made no matter what. Because it was just hyper efficient before, and now yes, it will be harder to get them all in. And a Tomb Banshee that's doing a -1 Wailing Dirge maybe is less interesting for people. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Something we didn't. We haven't gotten there yet. We're on character mounts. Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Character mounts.
So character mounts. Here's some interesting stuff here. So character mounts. The corpse cart may be ridden by a necromantic acolyte. So that's the one that they can take. And a Mortis engine may only be ridden by master necromancers. So no acolytes on Mortis engines, which I think is only fair because like the Abyssal Terror and the Zombie Dragon, for example, their big ones are the Lord only. And also, I think that again reduces efficiency, and that's good for me. I think that's good for the game and good for me. Skeletal Steed. Here's the movement increase from 7 to 8 is a reflection of the fact that another rule that Skeletal Steeds had was that they ignored the penalty for barding. So Skeletal Steeds were written in here as being movement 7, which would have accounted for barding. So as a Spectral Steed, they now ignore that. They get a pip extra of movement, and again, that's just a little small nerf, a small buff for Black Knights.
Perfect.
Graveguard. No changes. Graveguard.
Unit size?
Unit size is 5 up as opposed to 10 plus because they're an elite unit. I think with everything else around them, they are already pointed 1 point more than Tomb Guard. I looked at maybe making their great weapons plus 2 points per model, but they have to give up their shield to take a great weapon. So that's probably why it's 1, not 2. I think otherwise, I think if they weren't so bloody impossible to kill, I don't think the points are necessarily that out of line on them for an undead unit. And I think they're probably closer to Tomb Guard now in their resiliency and their efficiency. And that's why I didn't go to cooking their points or modifying their stats or nerfing anything else about them specifically. I think it's the stuff around them specifically that is the bigger deal. And also hopefully by elevating other options in core, even though there's no condition to taking Graveguard anymore in core, you're still maybe thinking about, well, maybe Black Knights, maybe Crypt Ghouls, maybe something else, or maybe it just stays Graveguard. I don't know. We'll have to get people playing with this and seeing how it feels.
Okay.
What do you think? What do you think about no changes to Graveguard?
I think fine. Because there are significant changes to Graveguard, but it comes in rules that you overlap on top of them. Mm-hmm. So there's been plenty of rules that have been added or changed to the Graveguard unit, and I think that's fine. Like they're a good unit. Recursion itself is just a very strange mechanic to have in the old world. Like, when you're paying, some armies are paying what seems to be insane points. This just looks like a regular data sheet. Like when you just look at this unit, this just looks like a regular normal sheet of an infantry unit. But then you can bring dozens of them back, and you're like, okay, this is cooked. But that's got nothing to do with the actual unit. That's got everything to do with the rules around it, which have been targeted, and I think that's important.
Okay, cool. Then we'll move on to Skeleton Warriors. So Skeleton Warriors now are identical in the way that they work and the options that they have to Tomb King skeleton warriors. So they are 4 points, but that doesn't mean that they got cheaper. It just means that you can upgrade to light armor if you choose. Mm-hmm. So you may not ever really want to do that because you're going to res them back anyway. So light armor is optional, which means that the baseline price for them for a hand weapon and shield is at 4 points. Makes them, I think, a little bit more interesting versus a zombie. Implacable Defense is actually pretty dope at 10 points per unit. Essentially, it just means that if you lose combat but aren't outnumbered, you don't have to give ground. And it's not like a one use at all. Like it's not like a one use item. And that's also the Nehek phalanx. They stay at 10 plus because they're again identical to the Tomb King ones. And yeah, now we're getting into it. Shit, you teased it already. We got to go to zombies. Let's go.
I'm just pausing the video for a minute. I wasn't laughing at the zombies. I was laughing at someone's autocorrect, bless them, asking if terrorgeists reduce it by -5. And then someone replied with, yep, the terrorists get -5. The terrorists win. And it's like, oh, you poor autocorrect. Okay, back. Zombies,
all
huh?
right. Zombies. So zombies. All right. So first of all, anyone who's reading this right now will see the unit's stat sheet is now movement 4, weapon skill 1, ballistic skill 0, strength 3, toughness 2 instead of 3, 1 wound, 1 attack, 1 initiative, 1 attack, leadership 2, 3 points still. This
is strange to me. Because zombies in my mind, when I've watched them in movies and books and everything else, they're super tough.
So
sorry, I've got confused. They're actually rotting corpses you can kill, like a kid can kill with a stick. I apologize. Sorry, carry on.
No, I actually, you know what? I think it's a completely valid. Comment because zombies have a lot of different flavors. There are different kinds of zombies. So the question,
you mean like 28 days later zombies?
Like there's
big
who are more
zombies.
Like kind of like Crypt Ghouls, like they're very like they move really fast, and or like there's what kind of zombie are we dealing with?
This is 1980s zombies though.
This more of the shambling horde zombie, I think, or like a Walking Dead zombie, where they are just sort of a relentless thing, but they're their heads are grapes. They can be exploded. So let me just also get into how this is backed up in the evolution of zombies over the years. So first and foremost, zombies started out with the stat line as it was here to begin with. Weapon skill 2, strength 3, toughness 3 was where they started in 6th edition. And then when you got to 7th, they dropped down, I believe, to weapon skill 1, strength and toughness 2. And then in 8th edition, they were weapon skill 1, strength and toughness 3. And the reason why I went with weapon skill 1, strength 3, and toughness 2 is that, 1, a zombie, I do think, is capable of ripping flesh and tearing up people and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's really important for a unit that has incredibly high recursion, the ability to bring it back very easily, and in fact, bring it back beyond its starting unit size. More on that in a second. Mm-hmm. That I think it's important that they are able to be chewed through. I think it's important that, like, especially for the feeling of interactivity, that a unit going into zombies should feel like they could kill the unit of zombies. Right now on the table, you pay you pay 60 points. You get a unit of 20 zombies. You raise it up to 40. So that means that you're essentially getting a strength and toughness 3. Weapon skill 2 model for 1.5 points. So cheaper than a Skaven Dreg, cheaper than a Noblar, and it's undead. So it can be brought back to life, and it has no interaction with the psychology phase. So that is that freeness of the zombies and having a good profile also means that they're harder to chug through. So at toughness 3, if you are strength 3, if you're strength 3 and weapon skill 3 against a zombie, right now you're hitting on 4s and you're wounding on 3s. You're not getting through a lot of zombies, even though in that matchup I think you should be just swinging baseball bats at their faces, blowing them up and squishing them like grapes. If you're at weapon skill 1 and toughness 2, well, now you're hitting them on 2s, if you're weapon skill 3, and you're wounding them on 3s. If you're strength 4, you're now hitting them on 2s, wounding them on 2s. You're able to grind through zombies really quick. You still
don't have that many attacks. Like, this game isn't built around having millions of attacks.
Well, it also, remember, because of how unstable works.
Yeah, really, I understand that. Like, it's kind of compounded every wound that you do.
Yes,
like every breath you take.
Yes, but right now, I think that math, especially when you get to a unit of 40, it doesn't work that well. The other thing is that there's very little reason to ever bring a unit of more than 20 zombies right now because of how reliably you can raise them up to beyond their starting level. And so you will also notice, if you've looked ahead, is that the newly dead is no longer on this stat sheet. I promise you, the newly dead is the thing that allows you to raise a unit of zombies beyond its starting size. Newly dead does exist. It's just not here. And then the other thing is, what kind of zombies? These zombies are a shambling horde. So a unit with this special rule never receives an initiative bonus for charging an enemy in its front, flank, or rear arc. In addition, a unit with a special rule may never overrun or pursue a fleeing enemy, but will always restrain. So these are the zombified zombies, and they are 3 points a model. You can now take more than 40 of them. If you wanted, you can make, because we've gotten rid of the unit size restriction because of the change. Again, newly dead will appear later. Stay tuned. But you can also just buy this unit now. You can, if you want to guarantee yourself having a massive unit of zombies, you can just pay for them up front. If you want to risk having to put a small vulnerable unit on the table that you're then later going to raise up, then that's a risk that you run. And we'll get into more of those trade-offs later. But this is where zombies are. If you stop listening right now, you will say to yourself, zombies are completely removed from the game. They're completely useless. You are not. I think lots of people. This is a heavy-handed nerf. But I would ask yourself, for 1.5 points. For 1.5 points, is weapon skill 1 and toughness 2 feel more accurate? I would say it probably does.
You have so many of these fucking things on the board. Shut up. That's so silly.
So anyway, so let's just put a pin in it, because the other half of how zombies work, of course, is covered by the corpse cart, which we're going to get to in a little bit. And I think that will make the picture a little more interesting. And also note the corpse cart is in core now. All right, so Crypt Ghouls. Crypt Ghouls. They went down a point to 8. They reduced their unit size to 5+. They now have light armor in addition to their regeneration 6+. So they're a 6+, 6+. For 1 points per model, you can give the unit give them the Ambusher special rule, and they also gain Armor Bane, Dark Fatalities. So again, they're only being raised at half the rate. But with the hunger, if they're killing stuff and eating it, they are basically rezzing models that way. So you can only res them half as much as you used to be able to, but if they are killing things, that balances out a little bit.
That's a fun rule as well.
So Crypt Ghouls were already good. They're toughness 4, 2 attacks. They're also a candidate. None of the Tomb Kings got the what's the word? The +1 attack on the charge that everyone got in the
Furious Charge.
In the Furious Charge, yeah. So Crypt Ghouls, I thought about it, them maybe getting Furious Charge, but then I said nah. So they didn't get it. There are already 2 attacks. They want to charge anyway. So I think Crypt Ghouls, again, maybe a little cooler. The way the hunger works too, if you put a Ghoul King in with Crypt Ghouls, what the unit kills will restore the Ghoul King. Is the way that goes. So like if he does get hurt, if they kill a bunch of models, the first model that gets wounds put back is the character. So that's something to think about.
That's cool.
Crypt Horrors stayed steady at 46 points because I think they're already not pointed poorly. Just updated a couple things for them, so they are more resilient now. So they have heavy armor. Scaly Skin counts as heavy armor. Up their regeneration to 5 up. And they've gained Dark Fatality. Again, can't res them as effectively. And the hunger, so if they eat stuff, they get back wounds. Still don't know if this is enough for them, but it was. I think this puts them in a similar place as some of the other options out there for monstrous infantry.
Perfect.
Bat swarms. Gave them back one of their old rules. One big thing about bat swarms and swarms in general in this list is that they are reduced to a unit size of 2+, which I think is really key for them because they're expensive for each base. So that means that now a unit of bat swarms is going to set you back. What would that be? 78 points as opposed to more than 78 points. 117 points, I guess, for a unit before. But of course, you get less models. And now they have the Cloud of Horror special rule. At the start of the combat phase, any enemy unit in base contact with one or more models with this special rule must make a leadership test. If the test is failed, that unit gains the strike's last special rule until the end of the phase. So this is a rule that they had specifically in 8th edition. It was just automatic before, so they just caused people to strike last. I thought this was fine because, again, if your general's nearby or you have good leadership, you don't probably have to worry about it, but maybe it does trigger strikes last.
Okay.
Vargheists. Okay. So 61 points a model. Vargheists are one of those almost good units. They've also, although they're monstrous infantry, so this is unusual for monstrous infantry. In a lot of other armies, this would be more like your Pegasus Knight, your Nurgle Plague Drones, etc., and they would be monstrous cavalry. In fact, maybe that should be changed over, and so a unit size of 2 up would not be as unusual. But I still think 2 here as well, going into a 2+, again, reduces the upfront cost of them, and I think that's useful. Mm-hmm. The biggest win for these guys is dispersed formation. I don't know whether or not to keep them frenzy or not. I switched them over to the Furious Charge Impetuous combination, which is sort of like a proxy for Frenzy, and is a little bit more controllable, but also Dispersed Formation. So before they had without Dispersed Formation, this is a skirmishing flying unit with Frenzy. So that means that literally in 360 degrees, if you wanted to bait them out for a charge, if they could make it, you could just pull them wherever you wanted. You could go behind them, side of the table, wherever. You can make them go wherever you want. With the way that they were written, so they were really, really hard to control. They were, of course, very squishy, so they had no armor. I didn't give them the scaly skin. I did give them light armor and improve their regen to 5 up. So they are more durable, but not as durable as a Crypt Horror. But anyway, they were very vulnerable to just being shot because toughness 4 with no armor save, essentially, except for 1 regen. And they were also just the easiest guys to just make go anywhere but where they wanted to go because of Frenzy plus having a 360-degree charge arc. Dispersed Formation came out in the most recent FAQ as a solution for gyrocopters and Pegasus Knights, and basically gives them a front arc. So they have a 90-degree arc just like any other unit, despite being in skirmish formation when they're making charges. So they have to be able to see what they're charging. So that to me is just immediately a buff, because if you don't want to get baited, you can just look in a direction that's not where you don't want to go. And so that helps a lot. And then also giving them Furious Charge Impetuous means they're semi under control and still get a benefit for charging. They just don't always have the +1 attack. So yeah, that's basically it. Plus they get the hunger as they're sort of in that family of starving guys, and they have Dark Vitality. So again, that balances out the nerf to Dark Vitality raising.
Multi-wing models with hunger is cool.
Yeah, I think so. We'll see how those guys go. Fellbats, no notes. They're awesome. Spirit Hosts, they go to a unit size of 2 to 6. So again, instead of it being a 147-point unit, now it can be had for 98 points. So that's good, but only 2 bases. Blood Knights, no changes here. They're expensive, but they are basically a unit of chosen knights that you can bring back from the dead, even if you're only getting a maximum of 2 of them back right now. That's good. Yeah, they're good.
That's ridiculous.
It's a 40-point value. Maybe they do need a bit of an adjustment, but we'll find out in the future. Black Knights, obviously, their Skeletal Seed is now reflecting the same as the mount, so they are movement 8. Drop them down. Oh, Blood Knights also got the unit size dropped to 4+ for being heavy cavalry. Skeletal Seeds get their barding for free now, as opposed to being...
One quick thing. Sorry, I can't remember in the FAQ, but they dropped some of those units down to 3+.
Those were the lance formation ones.
Is that the only ones? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
Yeah. And then I think that the heavy cav,
because I'm sure they did it to chosen knights as well, or knights.
They did those go down to 4 because they only need 4 to make a rank. I think is why.
Right. Perfect.
And maybe because they're going to sell the new models in multiples of 4.
Yeah.
And also Battle March. But yeah, so now their movement here is 8. They're 26 instead of 28 points. A very GW points reduction. So they're a little cheaper. Spectral Steed means that they move as if they're ethereal, but they are not they're not ethereal. So they can just ignore terrain when they're moving, and they're a little bit faster and a little bit cheaper. So maybe Black Knights are more appealing now. I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Yeah.
But they're closer to the way they were in the past.
Perfect.
Direwolves, no notes. They're awesome. Hex Wraiths. This is going to be a surprise for some. No changes to Hex Wraiths. So Hex Wraiths are a very popular choice right now.
They're meant to be good.
They're meant to be good. They are expensive. Maybe maybe Black Knights should come down to 24 points so that they're like literally the bottom end between Hex Wraiths are right in the middle between Black Knights and Blood Knights. But Hex Wraiths, the other thing, of course, too, is because they're ethereal, they're only going to be getting raised up at half the speed that they once were. So I think that's very, very big. Because remember, these guys are light cavalry. So they would have been getting raised at wizard level +1. So now it's wizard level +1 divided by 2, rounding up. You can do that math, guys. Don't worry, it's easy. So they can't be rezzed as much, and I think that's enough of a nerf to them to keep them where they are.
Woohoo! Okay.
Coven Throne. So a couple minor changes to the Coven Throne. So first and foremost, I want to come back to Coven Throne because I think there's really fun stuff to do with Coven Throne, because this is where, so like Strigoi went and lived with the Crypt Ghouls and with the Ghoul King. That's where that bloodline went. The Blood Dragons kind of just dispersed into various vampiric powers in 8th edition anyway, and then as did the Necrarch. But the Lamian vampires, who were all about like the seductive style of vampirism, like your Interview with the Vampire style vampires, and also your lady vampires. I only realized this when I started this work. That's what the Coven Throne is. The Coven Throne is essentially the representation of a Lamian vampire in the game right now. So this is where that bloodline went. And so there are some really cool Lamian vampire abilities from both 7th and 6th edition that I think would be fun to add to the Coven Throne. Right now, it just kind of has Beguile built into it. And so for now, all I've done is I've made sure that the Handmaidens have accursed weapons. And I've also, apparently, I've never noticed this, but the lances that the Coven Throne and the Mortis Engine have as part of the Spirit Horde didn't work, because lances only work if you're on a cavalry or monstrous cavalry, or a cavalry or monster. So they don't work if you're on a chariot, literally. So that's why there's this silly spectral lance now, because otherwise a regular lance doesn't work. So now they actually do have lances. And by the way, I use Mortis Engines. I've charged with them. Never realized that the Spectral Horde had lances. Not once. So right now, the Coven Throne essentially reduced it, I think, 30 points. I think it was more. I think it was like 195 or something compared to the Mortis Engine. Or maybe the Mortis Engine was at 195. I don't know. Maybe it was over. Anyway, reduce it a bunch of points. Leave it there. It's still a good platform for a vampire who's kitted out and shit. It gives you some free vampire powers. I think come back and revisit it and really theme it nicely around Lamians when there are bigger fish to fry. I think I might be the only person on the planet who owns a very nicely painted version of this. So I'll get around to it later. But
I've seen some nice versions of these. They're really pretty. They're like the
on a table.
Yeah. Oh, not in.
I guess AOS maybe. Yeah. Well, I think there's definitely, unlike, for example, this is the alternate build for the Mortis Engine. It was the dual build, and Mortis Engine had great rules in 8th. Coven Throne was just like, it's Coven Throne. And so I think that's why you see this dichotomy. But we've seen this before. with certainly the Dark Elves, the Cauldron of Blood versus the Gorgon one. There's sort of a stud and a dud. This one's the dud, but I think there's some really fun themey things we can do with it. So allow me to come back to it.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Mortis engine. Very little changes. In fact, almost none compared to 1.5. So yeah, it stays at 195. And then, it's impacted, I think, a lot by, changes that were already made, like Wailing Dirge affects it. Again, committing the Mortis engine for its Wailing Dirge is a real big trade-off because you have a caster on top of it. So I think changing, making it more expensive or nerfing it in other ways is not really beneficial. It's already, you're going to be thinking very differently about the Mortis engine already. And if we scroll down, you'll see the rules changes. We've got, essentially, this is the same effect as it had in the Renegade Legacy Pack, but it's just worded, I think, more cleanly. So it's just basically putting the when you're within range of one or more models with the special rule language in. So that way, Accursed Reliquary, which gives you +1 to movement and initiative, as well as Blasphemous Tome, which is +1 to casting for anyone within command range. Those two just don't stack. So you can't bring multiple Mortis engines and have more benefits there. Whew.
Woo! You do it.
We made it to Corpse Cart.
Corpse Cart's exciting.
All right, guys. So here's the other half of zombies. So right now, the default zombie is a shambling horde zombie, a brain dead zombie, and then you have the Corpse Cart. So the first big change to Corpse Cart, you'll notice, is it's now 60 points base. I think before it was like 120 something, and it was takeable. The biggest thing that's been removed, of course, is that it's no longer a level 1 wizard, but it is a mount option. So you can put a Necromancer Acolyte on here. Something else I'll point out here is that the Restless Dead has a weapon skill of 1, reflecting the old zombie stat line that existed before that they forgot to notice and change back here because the Corpse Cart was copied from 8th edition and they copied their zombies from 6th edition. Anyway, so if we scroll down, we've added a specific rule. Actually, we'll go through Balefire, Bazaar, and Brazier and Warped Intabulation first. But there's a base rule that they always get, which is Vigor Mortis. But for Balefire, Brazier, it used to be within 15 inches for that one, which is enemy wizards increase their spells casting values by 1. Used to be 15 inches for some reason. I don't know why they picked 15. Put it to 18 because at least that's easier to associate with your dispel range, especially if you have a mount on there of an acolyte person. And then Warped Tintinabulation made this one mirror the Invocation of Nehek range, which is 12 inches. So when a friendly unit is within 12 inches of this model, recovers a number of lost wounds due to a character using the Invocation of Nehek special roll on D6 roll. Roll a d6 on a 4+, add +1 to the result. It's worded that way, so that way if it's on a Dark Vitality or Ethereal, you're adding 1 to the result and dividing it in 2. I hope that's how that actually works. That's my intention. If that's not what that says, please tell me. In addition, friendly units within 12 of 1 or more of this models with this special rule reduce the number of wounds lost due to the unstable special rule by 1. Note that this is cumulative with the Indomitable X special rule, see page 27. So because these guys are core and can also be taken in as character mounts, you could have before it was written that you could stack them. So that would be it would be like Indomitable 6 plus whatever. It would have been so dumb. So yes, you can't stack the Warped Tintinabulation anymore.
Good.
But that all doesn't matter because Vigor Mortis is the rule that I think is really the key here. So if the baseline zombie that you can buy out of the book is a shambling horde zombie, Vigor Mortis, which is a rule that all Corpse Carts in the past have had, historically has given you always strike first. Or in this case, it would have been strike first, which to me is dumb. I don't think going from literally zombies that can't it's not like in 6th edition weren't allowed to strike anything other than last, to ones that were initiative 1 or had always strikes last, to then just flip them so that they're super fast, I think wasn't really useful. But the idea here now is Vigor Mortis is, whilst within 6 inches of one or more models with this special rule, friendly units of zombies lose the Shambling Horde special rule and gain the Newly Dead special rule, and modify their weapon skill characteristic by +1. In addition, whenever a friendly unit of zombies within 6 inches of one or more models with this special rule recovers lost wounds due to the invocation of a hex special rule, it recovers an additional D3 wounds. So the idea here is that your corpse cart is the thing that makes your zombies
stronger,
good, like turns them into something that's actually close to the zombies that you're used to right now. So the D3, it does do a lot of things, and that is on purpose. So the idea here is that the rules that make zombies very uninteractive, which to me specifically is Newly Dead, so the ability to raise them beyond their starting unit size, you can turn it off by killing the corpse carts, I think is an important thing, so that you can prevent that from happening. The weapon skill characteristic addition, again, combined though with the toughness 2, isn't as big of a deal. So like if they have a bit better weapon skill, that's fine. Maybe they're hitting on 4s, but they're still wounding on 3s, etc. And then the other thing is that the cart allows you to raise those zombies back better than you would other types of units, and it's specific to both the corpse cart and zombies. No other things, by giving it the extra D3 wounds. The reason behind that is people are going to be plowing through them a lot faster, right? So they're going to be dying faster, so they should be able to res faster. The trade-off is, to have those good zombies, you need to bring a corpse cart, which happens to be the same cost as 20 zombies. So it's essentially, now you can bring, you have some choices. With the corpse cart, you can bring no zombies. You can just bring a corpse cart, and you could make you can put a Necromancer Acolyte on it with Raise Dead. They can raise a unit of zombies for completely free, and then raise that unit of zombies up to 30, because you can go 20 over your starting amount. And that's a completely free unit. It's pretty risky though, because if this corpse cart, which is toughness 4 and has, I guess, 6 wounds, is popped, then you lose that ability. And in general, if you only ever bring minimum units of zombies, assuming that you can immediately get them up to a unit size of 40 because you have a corpse cart, then someone who's sitting across from you with ranged attacks, like say a cannon, might consider blowing up your corpse cart to prevent that from happening. So it gives counterplay to endless hordes of zombies while still giving you access to having them, which I think that's the intention. Whether this is how it goes down on the table, I don't know. We're gonna have to play it out. The intention is there that there is some interaction with how good a unit of zombies is and how cheaply you can get them. And ideally, if zombies are something that you can stop from being an endless horde by killing the thing that allows you to raise them beyond their starting level, if they're easier to chew through because they have lower weapon skill, lower toughness, they feel more fair. And they're also more fun because you're interacting with them. You're either popping their heads and killing them, or you're taking away the ability for them to be better versions. So that's my thesis on zombies, to try and get the economy of zombies to be more fair and interesting. Flame me in the comments if you're down with what I just said.
Awesome. Love that.
Black Coach just gave them access to up to 100 by 150 millimeter base, so the biggest base, if you want to use the fancy AOS one. That's up to you, but their default is the 50 by 100. And then I thought about putting them up to 5 wounds, but honestly, I really love the Black Coach. I think it's a really fair unit, and it's interesting to me. So kept it the same. Zombie Dragon. Only change to the Zombie Dragon is that they had a really lame carrying feeders. Was enemy units engaged in combat with this model suffer a -1 modifier to their initiative. I just changed that to weapon skill. For Eons, it was -1 to hit, actually, not anything. So I figured weapon skill was sort of not fully restoring that. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, fantastic.
Terrorgeists. So Terrorgeist gave them heavy armor. because they currently don't have scaly skin, and kept their Wailing Dirge at 2. I was very tempted to make their Wailing Dirge -3. So in when the Terrorgeist first appeared, their Wailing Dirge was actually a -4, and they are a big, very squishy monster. So like they're one of the worst platforms, like one of the less good platforms for Wailing Dirge. They have a gigantic base. They have a lot of downsides. So I very nearly made their Wailing Dirge a little bit better, and maybe I will do so in the future. But yeah, that's basically the only change. The only difference is on Infested, changing the wording there so it works with how regen works these days.
Okay. Good.
Abyssal Terror, again, I think this is basically a cut paste of a Wyvern. So although you may make one of its attacks with its whippy tail, with its strike first poison tail. That is an advantage it has over a Wyvern, which is sick, because you don't have to do that, which is great. But again, if you compare like a vampire count on an Abyssal Terror to a Shigungan General, it's comical how much cheaper the Shigungan is stock. And it's basically roughly, the vampire is a little better, but there you go. Would you believe we're on our last unit here?
Woohoo!
It's the Varghulf.
The Varghulf.
All right, so the Varghulf is, I buffed him to 5 attacks rather than 4, where he was in previous versions of the game. Dropped him down from 140 friggin' points to 110. Removed Frenzy. When I read the lore on him, he's not like a fully like lost in the sauce guy. Like he's not like the Varghulf from what I could tell in the framing of him. He's just sort of, and also he was mentioned as being like a potential leader for Crypt Ghouls. So like he's sort of adjacent to all of the Crypt guys, the Strigoi, the Strigani. So yeah, I thought bringing him more in line with them would be a better way to do it. And giving him the hunger and some heavy armor. Why not?
Why not? Cool. All right. That's a lot. You must be tired. That was a lot.
Well, it's mission accomplished, pal.
Mission accomplished. Good. How are you feeling now, having talked through it?
I'm really fascinated to see, because I know the gut reaction. Will have its pluses and minuses. Like some people will think, oh, it's gone too far, or it hasn't gone too far enough. Ideally, if I'm just getting flamed with people saying I didn't go far enough and I went too far, that means I nailed it, everybody. That would be fantastic. I'm hoping to see people be interested in how the dynamics of it work. I hope you can see the amount of thought that I put into not just killing units, but trying to give them fair ways to exist and be interesting. That was the goal, not to just like make it so, easiest solution would have been no Graveguard or Black Knights in core. Like that would be an easy thing to do. But then you kill Black Knight. Then you just kill that unit. So trying very hard to provide as many interesting, potentially good options to play with vampire counts, because I love them. And I also want this to be something that is received at least as a noble first attempt at this, at trying to navigate the pitfalls of all of it. There's also probably some broken interactions in there, and by that I mean like powerful ones or things that don't quite work. So I'm really eager to see the feedback when someone points at something that's really obvious that I've managed to miss in the 1,000 times I've reread this stuff. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I think I like where it landed. I hope it addresses most of the top line concerns for vampire counts, and where there are like multiple nerfs to things. I hope you can see that by virtue of the places where I didn't apply nerfs, that like that's intentional. It's not like a GW triple nerf. It's my assumption is it needs that much. And maybe I took a little too much off the top. We'll see.
Do you? Where would be finding this information?
Like what we just saw?
Yeah.
Well, there'll be a link to it in the didgeridoo as always, and then that will link to a document that will actually have a list of all the most recent drafts for all the Renegades that have been done, and you can have a look at those and this one just as soon as I guess the premiere of this has completed, which is happening as you're watching this now.
As you're watching
you'll be able
it.
to see those.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed this deep dive. I know Val is super excited to hear all of your thoughts and feelings on this. And we will obviously be back when there's lots more news to talk about on the Renegade stuff. Obviously, there's a point where there'll be updates and we'll provide them when we can. SBC tiers, we'll provide that when we can. And also, I'm hearing scuttlebutt that we're not long away from getting the new Warriors Beastmen book as well. So that's exciting.
Hordes of Chaos.
Hordes of Chaos. So it's an exciting future as well. So lots to look forward to from the old world. I will be, it's silly late to let you know this, but I am going to be live streaming a tournament this weekend if you want to check it out. But I'll post that as well. So that's some fun. Shout out to everybody. Let us know if you enjoyed it. Thanks very much, and a massive congratulations to Val for completing the Renegades project. That's been a huge testament, and in the annals of Warhammer Fantasy history, it will go down as a fantastic achievement. So you should be really proud.
Deep in the anal. That's where I want to be.
Deep inside. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.